Sarah still wonders how many times he stood over her bed while she slept, clutching the stolen key tight against his chest, breathing in her air. The realization did not hit Sarah all at once. It was a slow, creeping dread that started the moment she lifted the ceramic frog on her front porch and found nothing but damp concrete and a few scurrying pillbugs. The spare key was gone. She stood frozen, the heavy box of kitchenware digging into her hip. It had been 3 weeks since the divorce was finalized, 3 weeks since she had moved into the bottom half of this peeling, gray stucco duplex on the edge of Denver. It was supposed to be a restart, a place where the rent was low enough for a single income and the neighborhood quiet enough to heal. But now, standing in the fading twilight, the emptiness under the ceramic frog felt like a gap in her armor. "Lose something, dear?" The voice came from the shadows of the adjacent porch. It was Walter. He was sitting on his swing, as he always seemed to be, dressed in those eternal grease-stained blue coveralls. He was a man made of rough edges and stale tobacco smoke, somewhere in his 60s, with a face that looked like it had been crumpled up and smoothed back out too many times. "My spare key," Sarah said, trying to keep the tremor out of her voice. "I put it under the frog this morning just in case. It's gone." Walter was off his swing in a moment, moving with a surprising jerky agility. "Let me help. Eyes are not what they used to be, but I know this porch better than my own hand." For the next 20 minutes, Sarah watched as Walter crawled on his hands and knees. He checked the cracks in the floorboards. He sifted through the overgrown weeds near the railing. He even peered into the mailbox. Every time he looked up, his eyes, watery and pale blue, seemed to linger on her just a second too long, scanning her face with a hunger she tried to dismiss as neighborly concern. "Gone," Walter grunted, hoisting himself up. He wiped his dirty hands on his thighs. "Probably some neighborhood kid. Or a crow. Magpies love shiny things." Sarah stared at the dark wood of her door. "I should call a locksmith." "Locksmith?" Walter let out a dry, hacking laugh. "On a Sunday night? They charge you an emergency fee. You looking at $300 minimum, just for a deadbolt." Sarah felt the phantom weight of her bank account. After the legal fees, the deposit, and the movers, she had less than $500 to last the month. $300 would mean no groceries. It would mean panic. "I have the main key," she whispered, more to herself than him. "You fine," Walter said, stepping a little closer. He smelled of old coffee and copper. "This is a good street. Nobody breaks in around here. We look out for each other. I'm right next door. I hear a pin drop, I'll be there." He smiled, revealing teeth stained a deep, ochre yellow. It was meant to be reassuring, but it made the hair on Sarah's arms stand up. She looked at the door, then at the darkening street, and finally at her bank balance on her phone. Logic dictated she should be safe. It was just a key. It probably was a bird, or she had dropped it in the grass herself. "You right," Sarah said, forcing a smile she did not feel. "I'll just be careful." "Thanks, Walter." "Any time," he said. He did not move toward his own door. He stood there, watching her unlock hers, watching her step inside, watching until she firmly closed the bolt. That night, Sarah lay in her new bedroom, staring at the ceiling fan cutting through the shadows. The house settled with groans and creaks. Twice, she thought she heard the faint, metallic scratch of a key sliding into a lock, but when she bolted upright, there was only silence. She told herself she had made the pragmatic choice. She told herself she was safe. But as she drifted into a restless sleep, she could not shake the image of the empty space under the ceramic frog, gaping like an open mouth. The descent into madness did not happen with a bang. It happened in inches. It started 3 days later. Sarah came home from her shift at the dental clinic, exhausted, her feet throbbing. She tossed her keys on the kitchen counter and went to the bathroom to wash her face. When she came back, the keys were on the dining table. She stopped, the towel still pressed to her cheek. She remembered the clatter of them hitting the granite counter. She was sure of it, but her brain, fogged by stress and sleep deprivation, offered a quick rationalization. You moved them. You just do not remember. You on autopilot. 2 days after that, it was the smell. Sarah did not smoke. She hated the smell. But when she woke up on Saturday morning, the air in her bedroom carried a faint, acrid tang of cheap cigarettes. It was subtle, masked by her lavender laundry detergent, but it was there, a stale, lingering ghost of smoke. She checked the windows, closed and locked. She checked the vents. Nothing. She knocked on Walter's door later that afternoon. "Walter, are you smoking inside?" she asked, trying to sound casual. "I think it's drifting through the vents." Walter leaned against his doorframe, picking at a fingernail with a pocket knife. "Have not smoked inside since '98, Sarah. Bad for the walls. I do my puffing on the porch." He looked past her, his gaze drifting over her shoulder, focusing on the hallway of her apartment visible behind her. "You looking tired, hon? Rough week?" "I'm fine," she snapped, sharper than she intended. "You should try chamomile tea," he said, his voice dropping an octave. "Helps with the bad dreams." Sarah froze. "I did not say I was having bad dreams." Walter blinked, his face a mask of dull innocence. "Everyone has bad dreams after a divorce. Just a guess." The incidents escalated. Sarah would leave her lipstick on the vanity, standing up. She would return to find it lying on its side, the cap slightly twisted. A picture frame of her and her mother was turned face down. The milk carton in the fridge was placed on a different shelf. It was gaslighting by poltergeist, or she was losing her mind. The stress of the divorce had fractured her reality. She decided. She was sleepwalking. She was misremembering. She was becoming the hysterical, broken woman her ex-husband had accused her of being. But the physical toll was undeniable. She woke up more tired than when she went to sleep. Her muscles ached, her throat felt dry, and she had a recurring sensation of heaviness in her chest, like she was being crushed by deep water. The breaking point came on a Tuesday. Sarah was in the bathroom, reaching for her toothbrush. The bristles were wet. She stared at the blue plastic, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. She had not brushed her teeth since morning. It was 6:00 p.m. Someone had used her toothbrush, or someone had run it under the water just to let her know they could. She backed out of the bathroom, her hands trembling. She grabbed a kitchen knife and did a sweep of the house. The closets were empty. The space under the bed was clear. The locks were engaged. She sat on the floor of her living room, clutching the knife, sobbing quietly. She could not afford to move. She could not afford a psychiatrist. She was trapped in a box that was slowly shrinking around her. Then, a knock at the door. It was Walter. He was holding a small Tupperware container. "Made some stew," he mumbled, looking at her red, swollen eyes. "Thought you might want some. You look like you losing weight." "I'm fine, Walter," she said, clutching the doorframe, not letting him see the knife behind her back. "You know," he said, leaning in, his voice a conspiratorial whisper, "if you ever need to talk, or if you need someone to check the place, I noticed your blue vase in the bedroom was moved to the nightstand. Looks better there." Sarah stopped breathing. The blue vase. It was in her bedroom, with the curtains drawn. There was no angle from the street, no angle from his porch, no angle from the backyard where he could see that vase. "How do you know about the vase?" she whispered. Walter's eyes widened for a fraction of a second. Then the mask slammed back down. "Saw it through the window when I was watering the hydrangeas. You must have left the blinds open." "I never open those blinds," Sarah said. "Must have been a reflection," Walter said, shrugging. He set the stew on the porch railing. "Eat up. You fading away, Sarah." He turned and walked back to his side of the duplex, that clicking sound in his throat echoing in the evening air. Sarah did not eat the stew. She threw it in the trash outside, burying it under other garbage. She did not sleep that night. Instead, she bought a nanny cam, a cheap, battery-operated block that looked like an alarm clock, from a spy shop downtown. It cost her grocery money for the week, but the terror vibrating in her bones made hunger irrelevant. She set it up on her dresser, facing the bed and the bedroom door. She covered the LED light with a piece of electrical tape. For 2 nights, nothing happened. Sarah slept in the guest room with a chair wedged under the doorknob, checking the footage in the morning with shaking hands. Just hours of an empty bed and the shifting shadows of the oak tree outside. She began to doubt again. Maybe Walter had seen the vase through a crack in the blinds. Maybe the wet toothbrush was a leak from the ceiling dripping onto the counter. Maybe she was the villain in her own story. On the 3rd night, exhaustion won. Sarah fell asleep in her own bed, the sheer weight of fatigue dragging her under at 9:00 p.m. She slept heavily, dreamlessly, like the dead. She woke up to sunlight streaming across the duvet. She felt groggy, her head pounding, a strange stiffness in her neck. She sat up and looked at the clock camera. It was still recording. She pulled the SD card, loaded it into her laptop, and sat on the edge of the bed. She fast-forwarded through the first few hours of darkness. 11:00 p.m., 12:00 a.m., 1:00 a.m. Her sleeping form was a lump under the covers, barely moving. Then the timestamp hit 3:03 a.m. Sarah stopped breathing. On the screen, her bedroom door handle slowly, silently turned. There was no sound, just the visual of the brass lever dipping. The door pushed open an inch, then 2. A figure slid into the room. It was Walter. He was not wearing his coveralls. He was wearing unmatched pajamas that looked like they belonged to a child, too short for his limbs, and thick wool socks. He moved with a terrifying, practiced silence. He did not look around the room. He did not check the drawers for jewelry. He did not look for cash. He walked straight to the side of her bed. Sarah covered her mouth with her hand to stifle a scream that wanted to tear her throat apart. On the screen, Walter stood over her. He was close. So close that if she had turned her head, her nose would have brushed his leg. He stood there, rigid, looking down at her sleeping face. He did not move. He did not touch her. He just watched. For 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20. At the 3:42 a.m. mark, he moved. He slowly raised his right hand. In it, gleaming in the infrared light of the camera, was the key. Her key. He brought it up to his lips and kissed it, his eyes never leaving her sleeping face. Then he pressed the cold metal against the air inches above her forehead, tracing the shape of her skull without making contact. He was miming ownership. He was claiming her in the dark. At 4:00 a.m., he leaned down. His face filled the frame, blurry and distorted. He inhaled deeply, smelling her hair, his mouth opening slightly in a silent, ecstatic sigh. Then he turned to leave. But just before he slipped out the door, he stopped. He turned his head slowly, deliberately, and looked directly into the lens of the hidden camera. He smiled, a wide, knowing, yellow-toothed smile. He waved. Sarah did not scream. The horror was too deep for sound. It was a cold, paralyzing poison that froze her blood. He knew. He had known the camera was there. He had performed for it. She grabbed her phone, her keys, and ran. She did not pack a bag. She did not put on shoes. She sprinted out the back door, barefoot across the gravel, into the bright, indifferent morning light. She scrambled into her car, locked the doors, and sped to the police station 3 miles away, her breath coming in ragged, hysterical sobs. When the police arrived at the duplex an hour later, they did not knock. They kicked down Walter's door. Sarah sat in the back of the squad car, wrapped in a shock blanket, watching the scene unfold through the window. She expected them to drag him out in handcuffs, kicking and screaming. Instead, the officers came out carrying boxes. First, a box of women's driver's licenses. Then, a box of Polaroids, hundreds of them, showing women sleeping. Women in their beds, women on their couches, women in hotels. All asleep, all unaware. Then came the keys. It was a large tackle box. Inside, neatly labeled with masking tape and dates, were hundreds of keys. Brass keys, silver keys, car keys, house keys. An officer walked over to the squad car where Sarah sat. He looked pale, shaken. "Ma'am," he said quietly. We found him in the basement. He surrendered without incident. Did you find my key? Sarah asked, her voice sounding like it belonged to a stranger. We found your key, the officer said. He hesitated. We also found a logbook. He's been entering your unit for 3 weeks. Every night, from 3 a.m. to 5 a.m. Sarah closed her eyes, feeling the nausea roll over her. 3 weeks. While she dreamed of escape, he had been the monster standing guard. But that's not all. The officer continued, his voice grim. He did not just have your spare key, ma'am. He had the original. Sarah's eyes snapped open. What? The key you lost. The one under the frog. That was the copy he made. The one he was using was the one the landlord gave him 5 years ago. He owns the duplex, ma'am. Walter is not the tenant. He's the landlord. He has owned this building for 20 years. Sarah looked at the house, the peeling paint, the dark windows. It was not a home. It was a terrarium, and she had been the latest specimen. They took Walter away in a separate van. As he passed her car, he did not look down or hide his face. He looked right at her through the reinforced glass. He did not smile this time. He just clicked his tongue against the roof of his mouth once, twice, 3 times. Sarah moved out that afternoon. She left the furniture. She left the clothes. She left everything that had been in that house. She moved to a high-rise apartment with a 24-hour doorman and electronic keycards that could not be copied at a hardware store. She bought a gun. She went to therapy. But safety is an illusion that, once shattered, can never be fully glued back together. Even now, 2 years later, living on the 14th floor, Sarah wakes up every single night at 3:03 a.m. She lies frozen in the dark, straining her ears against the silence, waiting to hear the soft, impossible click of a tongue, wondering if somewhere in the shadows of the room, a man is standing over her, breathing her air, holding a key to a lock that does not exist.